Morning. Well, today you find me, just before we get into the main part of this video, walking along quite close to where I'm moored in Milton Keynes, going through a part of the park called Jones Peace, and this is sort of isolated and rural even by Milton Keynes standards of the Grand Union Canal, and that's because this canal winds out of the city, does a big loop through some countryside and then goes straight back into it again. So I felt this would be a nice backdrop for us to have what is, I'm afraid, quite a serious chat. Today we need to talk about one of the biggest threats to our canal system today. So for once, I'm not talking about funding, and I'm not talking about the government. I'm not even talking specifically about the CRT. I'm talking about the significant threat to the canal system, which is some of its own users. You see, I am a member of several excellent Facebook groups to do with the canals. Shout out to the Single and Solo Boaters group, and to the Friends of the Grand Union group, and to the Friendly Waterways group. And even on the Friendly Waterways group, which goes out of its way to moderate out some of the sillier comments, every time anyone posts anything at all about the CRT, including the CRT on their own posts, there is an increasing deluge of what I would call malicious populism going on. So it's almost as if a lovely community which has existed, with all sorts of different people in it for years and years and years, is in danger of being taken over by a shouty, angry minority mob of Egypts who have chosen an enemy to shout at and will just scream at any possible opportunity, whether or not it's true. Obviously, there's no metaphor for the whole country there, now is there? So, let me define some terms here. I am not talking about people who criticise the CRT specifically. I am not talking about people who are unhappy with the service they have received from the CRT, or even people who think that the licence fee is too expensive. I'm talking about people who go out of their way to misrepresent the facts, and normally to fail to understand the facts if they possibly can, and on quite a lot of occasions simply talk outright nonsense in an attempt to do down the CRT for I don't know what purpose. Now, I don't need to go into why some of the things they say are wrong, because I've covered quite a lot of them already, but you can tell these people quite a lot. So they'll usually start with the chief executive gets paid far too much money. We've dealt with that earlier. No, he doesn't. Again, if you look at the facts, we go on with the CRT don't do a good job of looking after the canals, and that's a matter of opinion. So you're entitled to that opinion, but normally it is connected with this lock or that lock, or my favourite bit of canal is closed, or not maintained as well as it should do. At the moment, the CRT are closing facilities blocks because they don't have the means to keep them open, and basically they take the view that toilets by the side of the canal are nicer to have rather than an essential. Ditto showers. They take the view that if you have a canal boat, you're likely to have a shower and a toilet on board, and that they'd rather spend the money on something else. That gets criticised, but so does not spending the money on something else. Also gets criticised, often in the same sentence, by the same people. Another big red flag is complaining that they waste all of the money and that the licence fee is far too expensive. Well, that is a point that is slightly worth going into. So, the average licence fee on the canal system is 1,200 quid. Mine is a bit more expensive, mine is 1,500 quid a year. And recently the Canal and Road Trust commissioned a report about the future of licensing, and I'm going to do a reaction video to that report because it's very sensible, and I don't agree with all of it, but there's loads of really good points in it. And obviously, you know, the usual malicious screamers are out in force. But that report contains something very interesting. So I said that these sort of malicious screamers are actively causing the canal system harm, and they are. So out of my 1,500 quid, slightly under £10 of my licence fee a year, at an estimate, and bearing in mind that nobody really knows, at an estimate, slightly under £10 goes to pay the chief executive's salary. More than £140 goes to covering the cost of boaters who have failed to pay their licence fee. So, boaters that are not following the rules and not buying into the whole thing are costing me 14 times as much as the chief exec's salary. And in this report it made it really clear that there are, at any given time, the CRT are pursuing 5,000 cases of not paying their licence fee. 5,000 cases. So, you know, if it's, let's say, £1,000 a licence, then that is, you know, £5 million that they're not receiving every year that they should be. There are only 35,000 boats on the system, and so therefore for 5,000 of them to be not playing the game, to be evading their licence fee, and that's 15%. That's absolutely astonishing. Now, CRT does deserve a certain amount of criticism here for not actually chasing this as hard as they could do. But then when they do chase it, you know, it gets into the press, and the press always make it up as, you know, poor innocent boater being handed off the system by the nasty evil CRT. Now, I don't have any proof that the people that are actively and aggressively bad-mouthing the CRT online are the same people that are not paying their licence fees. I imagine some of them are, and some of them are not. But the fact remains that a major financial blow is being dealt to the canal system that we all rely on, and that many other people walk by and get mental health benefits from, by people who want to be entitled for something for nothing. And that, to me, is a big threat to the system. Now, I'm just going to stop filming for a minute because the view is so lovely that I just want to stop and admire it for a bit. Here we are, a little bit later, and the view is still lovely. So, what can be done about this? There are thousands upon thousands of people actively harming the system by failing to play their part. Well, the problem is that in the past, the British Waterways and then the CRT have basically relied on the honesty system, and it has broadly worked up until the last few years. The fact remains that at the moment you can go onto the CRT website and register yourself as Mr. M. Mouse and put down a false address and photocopy a boat safety certificate and Photoshop out the expiry date, and you can basically cheat and then disappear and not pay your licence fee, and there is basically nothing they can do about it. So the CRT are going to have to get a lot tougher. And again, when we talk about this report, that is part of what they're saying. So they're going to get a lot tougher. They're going to ask for more statutory powers, and they're going to start to actively remove boats and tow them to a lock-up and lock them up. And that's all a bit, sad, but it's what needs to be happening because so many people are not playing by the rules. What, therefore, can we normal boaters do about it? Well, it is very tempting, especially if you are feeling cross with the CRT, and there's reasons why you may well be, when you go on these social media sites, to chime in and agree with the bad actors. And it is only a small number of bad actors that are actively whipping up the crowd into sort of nonsensical hate. I would urge you to do your research and try and be balanced in the way that you comment. By all means criticise, but at least try and get your facts right. You can tell who the bad actors are on these sites. They fall into a relatively small group of people, normally male, not exclusively, male, middle-aged. If you have a look at their other profiles, they have a tendency to be, out hanging George flags on lampposts a bit, should we put it that way? And they will spout the same 5 tropes again and again and again, which are in order: 1, the chief exec gets paid too much; 2, the rebrand was a waste of money, which it may or may not have been, but we don't actually know. We don't know what the effects were. 3, the CRT is trying to drive people out of fill-in specific place where they have a bee in their bonnet about here. 4, posting some of the madder stuff to come out of the National Association of Boat Owners, which are basically like the sort of militant Trotskyite wing of the IWA. They're an independent organisation, but they're nutters. And then 5, they will scream down anybody who in any way suggests that they might want to do any form of fact-checking before posting nonsense. Don't engage with them online. Even if you're frustrated, just leave it, or post your own comment making the criticism you wish to make, fair enough, in a measured way. Or you could do what I do, which is slightly naughty. I take a leaf out of Joe Lyson's book, and I don't in any way engage with the content, but I just correct the grammar and the spelling, which normally provides, endless fun. You're going to get some comments like this on this video, I guess. But the bottom line is the Canal system works on kindness. It works on kindness and neighbourliness, and it works on people pulling together. So if there is something wrong with the CRT, help them fix it. Volunteer. Ask them to change it. Engage with the process. Don't go and scream abuse on Facebook. It just makes the system worse for everyone. And when I was a manager, I had little badges made up once that said "Don't be a dick," and it's just that. Whenever you're going to speak, think about when you open your mouth: are you being a dick? And if you think you might be, then don't be. It's as simple as that. I'm going to post a video next week, I think, going through the report that the CRT commissioned in detail, because I have read it all, because I like to know my facts, and you will have my response to it, which is broadly positive, in the next week or so. Until then, I hope you have a lovely time, whether you're just watching the canals, on the canals, walking the canals, or nothing to do with the canals, and I will see you next time. If you like these random videos, please do subscribe. It helps me out an awful lot. Thank you very much. Goodbye.